Hey everybody, today I wanted to talk about cleaning up drum mixes or tightening them up during very rhythmic parts. I apologize in advance for being sick and sounding like crap. And I also apologize in advance for the drums sounding like crap because this is me and I sound like crap as a drummer, which is why I have to learn how to do these things. This technique that I'm going to be using, you hear a lot in metal music. Like for really heavy metal, this is gonna be happening a lot. And really, it's just something producers do. It's something that I stayed away from for a really long time because I felt like it was cheating. And there's a few things that come along with it that I'm going to talk about. But at the end of the day, if you want to really have full control and tighten up a drum mix, these are the ways you can do it. I'll be talking about kind of the down and dirty way to do it, triggering, where you just take your drum track and use samples for it, which I read an article from the producer for Dirty Loops, and once I found out that he did this, I was like, you know what? I guess I can do it too. Because I love Dirty Loops. I love their sound. I love everything about them, and it doesn't take away anything. Well, in my case, it does. It doesn't take away anything from the musicianship, because he said, the drummer that you're hearing, the actual like nuanced drum parts, that is the drummer playing. But for like the big choruses where things get very empty and there's just big hits on the snare, he'll do what I'm going to do. He's going to use samples and triggers and things like that. So the first thing I want to say about this is that, I guess really not the first thing, I've been talking for a while. The first thing I want to say about this is that you should never accept a bad take just thinking you're going to fix it in post. Always get the best take that you can. Don't go, oh, I guess we can just fix it in post. No. If it's bad, fix it. Re-record it. Re-record it until it sounds good. I mean, punch in and out. Do what you need to do. Like, I love punching in and out. It's a great way to fix things. But don't accept a bad take just to fix it in post. It's a terrible mindset. And sometimes, actually most of the time, you can't fix it in post. It's just going to sound bad. So don't do that. The second thing is that you can make this as tight or as loose as you want it. You can use this to make your mixes and your recordings like ridiculously tight. But the issue is that the tighter you get, the more difficult it becomes and the longer it's going to take for you to get this mix to sound right. So use this, find out why you want to use it and use it, sparingly. Don't, like, one example to use it is when you get a really, really, really good take. Like, the whole take was perfect except for one note. You can use examples. You can use this to kind of fix that little flub. Another example that you'll need to use it in is when you have a lot of double bass work. Usually the drummer's feet are not as precise as everybody would like them to be, but we don't live in a perfect world. So sometimes you'll have to go in there to quantize some double bass. If you're not triggering, that gets really, really difficult. But we'll talk about all that. So let's go ahead and start talking about how to clean up a drum mix. We'll start with the first way to do it, which is the down and dirty way, quick and easy, triggering. So in this case, we're going to be using Ableton. I've got my drum parts recorded here, as terrible as they are. Let's go ahead and give those a listen. Let's hear how bad this is. And I'm sure for any actual musicians or drummers out there, that's painful to listen to. It's painful for me too, I understand. So let's talk about how to fix it. Now, you should be pretty familiar with working in MIDI. MIDI is awesome to work in. It's like, man, I wish I could just work with drums in MIDI. Well, you can by right-clicking the top of the clip here, and then going down to Convert Drums to New MIDI Track. Now, in this case, I'm just doing it with the kick drum. I'm just going to right-click the kick drum, and then go to Convert Drums to New MIDI Track. This is a new feature in Ableton 9. I think they added it, and it's awesome. It's the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. Because what this is going to do is it's going to take like the beats that it reads using transients, and it's going to drag it to not only is it going to drag it to a MIDI track, but it's going to add a drum rack to it. So this is over here now, and what I'm going to do is solo that. Now you'll see that it has added all of this. It's trying to read a hi-hat, a kick, and a snare, and we just don't have any of that. So just take everything that's not the kick out. And you'll notice that Ableton gives it an 808 kit. So, you know, even though it's not a great kit, you can hear how how it's going to sound. So we've got this soloed. Now let's go ahead and look at it. And you can tell it's already off. Now, depending on how bad the track was, how offbeat everything was, you can quantize from here. You can just hit Control A, anywhere in the grid, hit Control A, and then hit Control Shift U, and that'll bring up your quantize settings. And whatever the rhythm meter is, like if it's 16th notes or 8th notes or quarter notes, you choose that, and then you hit quantize. Now, you can do the start and end. That isn't going to quantize the end of the note and the start of the note. Since it's drums, we don't even have to quantize the end. I just like doing that to keep it square, nice and easy to work with. And the amount is how picky Ableton's going to be about putting it directly on top of the beat. If you go to 100%, it's going to make sure that every single note is directly on top of the beat. It's a perfect quantize. If you go back to like 70 or 80 or something, it'll humanize it a little bit, let it kind of get off just a hair, not too bad. So I'm just going to go to 100 for the sake of doing so, and quantize it. Now, unfortunately, this mix was this take was incredibly bad. It was all kinds of offbeat. So I'm gonna have to go in here and figure out what to do. In this case, it has a repeating rhythm to it, so it's going like ba 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 ba. So I'm gonna find that original part, make sure it's all good. And then, so that's just a one measure part that repeats over and over again. So I'm just going to copy this measure here by hitting Control C. And I'm going to delete everything after it, because I know that that's not going to be right, just because the take was really, really bad. And then I'm just going to click on the 2 here. We've got that right here. Bam, 2. Control V. And then you can hit Control D, and it's just going to duplicate all your tracks. So bam, I've got it done. So now the rhythm is right. We fixed the rhythm. So let's go here, hit Control A, and then drag all of these little velocity markers to the top. We're just gonna max them all out. Great. So obviously we don't want an 808 kick sound. So we're going to disable this real quick. Just disable the actual audio kick drum. You can delete it if you don't want it anymore. It's useless now. We've got MIDI. MIDI is stronger, better, more powerful. Double click this guy right here. Double click your MIDI track for the kick drum. And you'll see here that Ableton has conveniently given us a drum rack to work with. From here, you want to go to your browser and look at all of your drum sounds. Now, I have a lot of drum sounds, and a lot of producers will have just huge folders of snares and kicks and things like that they like the sound of. And luckily in Ableton, you can just kind of go through them and click on the ones that you want to hear. Let's see. So let's go here and then to kick. And it'll give you a live preview of what the kick is going to sound like. So you can just click through all of your kicks and try to find one that you like the sound of. I'm going to see if I can find... Yeah, there's my favorite one. So I'm just going to drag this guy down here. You grab it from the browser and drag it to the drum menu of the kick. Bam. And now we've got a nice actual recorded drum to that. Cool. So from here, you can go back to the velocity settings and kind of mess with those. If you want to, you can do it by hand. Just move them around a little bit and try to find what you like the sound of. You can use the MIDI velocity tool in Ableton to kind of give it more of a human feel. Or you can just keep it straight, keep it direct. Usually, like for heavier music, when there's a lot of big guitars going on and a bunch of other stuff going on with the cymbals, you can just keep it like at a high velocity or somewhere. Just keep it flat and it'll sound good because it's adding that punch to the rhythm. Great. So let's go ahead and do the same thing for the snare. So I've got my snare here. I'm going to fold this guy up. I've got my snare right here. Let's rename this guy kick. MIDI kick. MIDI kick. So we're going to right click the top of the snare here and then go to convert drums to new MIDI track. And just like magic, it takes that audio sample and then turns it into MIDI drums and then drops it into a drum rack and it does all that for you. Used to, back in my day, we had to, back in Ableton Live 6, we couldn't even do any of this. I mean, this is ridiculous. Okay, so now that we've got that, let's go ahead and we're going to rename this MIDI snare, son. Bam! And fold that guy up. Who cares about him? Now let's expand this one. And you'll see it tries to read, you know, a kick, a hi-hat, all that stuff. Anything that's not the snare, we just need to delete. So we're going to delete all this hi-hat garbage. And we're going to look down, no kick stuff. And then, since this is such a simple beat here, we can just hit Control-A, click down here, Control-A, Control-Shift-U, and then we're going to go to fourth quarter notes, start in 100%, and then bam, we've got a super tight snare. So let's solo that out, and then listen to it. Yeah, there it is, that nice 808 snare. Who doesn't love it? Good. So then you do the same thing here. We're going to double click there to bring up our drum rack. We're going to go back to our drum sounds, go up here, and then hit, let's go to snare, and our little browser here. And you can just click through all of your snare sounds. And I'm not really going to get into the mixing or anything like that, but you can figure all that out, I'm sure. You know, I really gotta organize these. Don't do what I did. Just get a few really nice sounds and then just make your own folders. This is fun, isn't it? Oh, wait, what was that? Oh, there we go. Let's just use that. Why not? Oh, sorry. And then you drag that down here to the snare or whatever assigned MIDI note that it's hitting. Oops, and that was not it. It was this one. I'm sorry. All right, you'll figure it out. You're a smart person. You're a smart person, and you can figure this out. Oh, so then we go in and we do all our velocity stuff. I want my snare to be aggressively loud. Not really aggressively loud, but we can fix all that over here. One great thing about Drum Rack is it gives you the ability, now this is for like Ableton specific stuff, for like their, I don't even remember, session drummer. It gives you the ability to control all of this crazy stuff. If you use Ableton a lot and you do stuff like this, get session drums. They're amazing. You can like individualize the mics and stuff, and it puts all these macro control. It's just great. You can do so many things with it. So you can mess with your snare tone and all that however you want to. But let's listen to it with the kick and the snare. Great. So obviously you can, go into your mixing and make that sound however you want to make it sound. This isn't really about mixing. I had some tom mics and a hi-hat mic, but there's no hi-hat or tom part. So I'm just going to delete all of those. Now let's go ahead and listen to it with the ride cymbal added in. And you can tell the previous track and how it's getting in there and making everything sound terrible. So let's listen to this ride track by itself real quick and find out where's my ride? Where am I ride at? 3, 4, 1. So it's just on the quarter note. Or it's supposed to be on the quarter note. All right, so let's go to, let's right click our ride and we'll see how this goes. I don't know how this one's gonna go. Let's go to convert drums to new MIDI track. Same thing. And again, you're smart. You'll be able to figure this out. I mean, Ableton's great and it's given us a lot of amazing shortcuts, but Sometimes you just got to go in there and make a MIDI track for it, man. All right, so it's converting that. Let's see if it's going to even know if there's a ride in there. I know it's going to read the snare. It's going to tell me the snare's over here. It might even try to read the kick. All right, we'll find out. Open it up, see what we got. Nice, nice. So, I'm going to delete all the kick and snare stuff. And what you'll notice is that it kind of read the ride here, but it also read all those little hits as just really soft hi-hat hits. Ableton's smart, not that smart. One really quick way to take care of this issue is down here in the velocity browser, or whatever the heck that's called, in the velocity area. You can click and drag and just select all the stuff in that lower velocity, right? And then you can just hit delete. Now it's all gone, and we're left with some nice even eighth notes. It's amazing. Or quarter notes, that's what they were. And then hit Control A, select all those notes in there, Control Shift U. Were they quarter notes? Then let's just stick to that. And it's just gonna flatten all that out for us. How amazing is that? Now in this case, I'm gonna bring that velocity up. I'm gonna let it keep that little wavy thing going on there. And then I'm gonna go to the drum rack here. I'm gonna find the hi-hat, which I think is this one right here. I think that's the one it wanted to, yeah, that one right there. And then I'm gonna go back to my browser, just like we've been doing. And I'm going to go to rides. Now, usually with cymbals, I don't really like the sound of cymbals. I don't think you can get them to sound good with electronic drums. I mean, like one cymbal hit, that's totally fine. It's just like, oh, 16-inch crash, just record it, plug and play. But when it comes to like nuanced ride stuff and hi-hat work, you just can't emulate it. You have to get a good take on it. But you can work with it, make it sound good enough, because what's going to happen is once you get all the drums and the guitars and the basses and the vocals and keyboards in there, it's all going to kind of go away. So just get something that you're okay with. Not something that's perfect, but something you're okay with. I should have had this ready to go, but I don't. Great, and once you have that sample dropped, let's go ahead and listen to all three of these guys together. Oh, wait, we forgot the most important part. Rename it MIDI Ride. And then we can start soloing all this stuff. Control. Great, and from there you just mix. You want to do all your mixing now. Pan, equalize, go watch the drum mixing video. Everything I said in that video applies to MIDI, so good luck. Like I said, once you start dragging and dropping, once you start, putting the bass in there and the guitars and all that, the quote-unquote electronicness of the drum set goes away a little bit. It takes a long time to learn how you're going to want to do your velocities, like if you're going strictly MIDI and not like hybrid, like have some acoustic parts and some triggered parts. But if it's like metal music, just throw it all up, man. Just like huge velocities, keep it punchy, keep it loud, put it up front. I mean, just make it raw, aggressive. That was not very aggressive. But when it comes to more nuanced stuff, you have to like kind of tweak it a lot more, a lot more. But this is just a general idea of how to trigger live drum audio that's just a little bit off, or if you just want to add a little bit more control to the mix or a little bit more power to the mix. Or if you just hate the sound of a snare, this is a great way. That's something I do a lot. I'm just like, the snare sounds like crap, so I'll just take it out entirely and then add this to the mix. I'll just MIDI trigger it and then get my own snare sounds, and it's great. It's wonderful. So now we can start part 2.
Crazy music, crazy people, crazy people, crazy music, crazy.
So let's say that you don't want to use MIDI stuff. You've actually got really good takes. You like your mics, you like the way your drum set sounds, but some stuff is a little bit off. Now, in this is going to be one of those things that it's going to be different every time you edit. Sometimes you'll have a lot of trouble doing this. Sometimes things will just fall into your lap. So you really want to kind of experiment and understand that there's not a single way to do this. There's so many ways that you're going to go about doing this, and there's so many shortcuts and tricks you have to learn, and sometimes you just can't fix it. You have to accept the fact that sometimes after 6 hours, working on a 3-second clip, you might want to say, let me just get a better take or something. All right, so let's go ahead and start here. Let me minimize all my MIDI tracks and pull up my audio tracks. We've got our kick, our terrible kick, our terrible snare, and our terrible ride. So first things first, you want to go into your options and then preferences. This is just a great idea for any Ableton user at all, by the way. Go to Record Warp Launch right here. And then under Warp/Fades, go to Default Warp Mode. And then go to Complex. Now, the reason you're doing that is because you don't want to have to select that every time you're working on something. Just do that. It makes everything sound better when you start warping audio. And once you've done that, you can move on. Great. So let's just close that, let it do its thing. And we'll go ahead and start with the kick drum. Now, let's go ahead and solo that, reactivate all our tracks, and listen to it real quick, how terrible it is. So you can tell that's really, really off. But I know where the beats are supposed to be, and that's the important part. So we're going to double click the top of this track to give ourselves the view down here. Zoom in on that. Great, great, wonderful. Now, Ableton is so smart. Ableton is just so smart. Ableton's here to help you out. So if you look up here, we've got these little gray markers on the top. And there are cheating devices. They're amazing. They're kind of like turning audio into MIDI to where we can just move it around and stretch it and turn it and twist it sideways and do a bunch of stuff. So to make all of those turn into actual, right now they're gray, we can't act on them, Well, we can, but we don't want to. To make them all individual, to turn all of these little kicks into individual notes, we click here, anywhere on the grid, hit Control A to select all the audio clips and stuff, and then hit Control I. Now, what Control I is going to do is, like I said, turn all of those individual hits. It's going to give them each their own warp marker. So we can move them individually, the hits individually, without affecting the location of the other hits. It's a very important thing to do. You'll notice down here that Ableton didn't do what I said, and she didn't make everything complex. So we're going to click right down here under the sample section, the warp menu. We're going to make sure that says complex. If it doesn't, it'll sound really, really, really bad. You can also do Complex Pro and start messing with that, but you'll figure it out with time. You're smart. You're very smart. You know how to do this stuff. So we can see here that we've got all these little handles now. We can move each one of these notes individually back and forth in between the other notes, and even just kind of smash them together. So you can see already that this first one right here is not right. We need that to be on the 1. So we're just going to drag that back to the 1. And that is the first step of this process. Now, if your drum track is clean enough, like say everything was really close, but it wasn't too far off, you can, from here, hit Control A, and then do the same thing we did with MIDI. Hit Control Shift U to open your quantize menu, and you can quantize this whole thing. And in this case, mine would be 16th notes, and you can set the amount to humanize it. Now, unfortunately, this drum track that I recorded is so bad, and my footwork is so terrible, I can't do that. I can't even quantize it. It's that bad. So I'm gonna have to do this all by hand. So I know that all the notes I need, the smallest segment is gonna be 16th notes. So I'm gonna change my grid by right-clicking this and going to fixed grid and then 16th notes. So now I'm just gonna find the parts that I need and just drag them to the 16th note closest to it, or the appropriate 16th note. And I'm gonna do this for a little bit. And like this one's really close. I'm not even gonna bother with it. I'm just gonna leave it there. It's only the ones that are really, really, really far off that I'm gonna start dragging and dropping into their new locations. And right here, you can start seeing how far things get off. It's like a 30-second note behind. Everything's off by a 30-second note. And here it gets even worse. It's by like a 16th note. It gets so bad because I'm such an awful drummer. Now, I'm about a quarter into the clip, so let's listen to it real quick. Good. Okay, so that's getting closer. Let's just keep going in this process. Let's see. I can't even tell if that one was supposed to... It is. Okay, it's supposed to be over here. Here I start getting a little bit better. And, you know, as you're doing this, you should start, you know, hitting play, listening back to it, making sure that everything's still sounding all right. In this case, my drum mic just sounds awful, like I said. And I would just use MIDI triggering for this stuff. But if you've got a really good, clean track, you can do this and it'll sound good. But I just haphazardly threw a drum mic in there without doing any testing, so almost there. We're just going to keep clicking and dragging. And again, you know, as you're doing this, just kind of like find where that little orange cursor is and listen back. And good, good. Keep going, keep trudging along. This is a very time-consuming process sometimes, but I'll probably end up fast-forwarding this in post, or not, and just making you sit here and listen to me. You know what? I'm almost done. So let's keep having a little talk. How's your day going? How was work? You know, all that stuff. And bam, we're done. So let's listen back to it real quick. Oh no, whole thing. Great. So we've quantized our kick, audio, not MIDI. Great. Simple enough, right? It's easy. So let's go to our snare here. Give it a quick listen. You can already tell we're completely off. Now, we have an issue. You'll notice that while Ableton is amazing and helps you out so much, it works so hard for you, sometimes it does this. It'll add too many transients. So if we were to do the thing we did last time and hit Control A to select the whole thing and then hit Control I, it's going to give us way too many transients. And we don't want to work with that many transients, all those little gray guys up there. So we're going to manually add these in just for the snare hits, the ones that are very obvious to us. These, that one, this one, that one, this one, so on and so forth. And we've only got 8 hits in here, so it's not that big of a deal. And some of them, they're not even that far off. So you can just drag and drop this guy, quantize it to the quarter note closest to it. And then we'll listen back on it. And you can be as picky or as not picky with this as you need to be. And this is a simple example. So let's listen to that. Great. So let's listen to that with the kick. Not too bad. Now keep in mind I've got a gate on the snare, and once you start doing these quantizing things, the more you quantize, the higher you're going to want to put the gate to really, because it garbles the audio around it. So you want to make sure that everything's really cut off and really tight. You can even go in there and manually clean all of the leftover garbage by just reaching in here. Usually you want to do this by like turn the grid off and then select the part that you just want to get out of there and then delete that. But a gate just does that for you. But the more you quantize stuff, the more you're going to have to clean the audio up. And like I said in the beginning, the tighter you want the sound, the more you're going to have to work for it. So let's go to the trickiest part. So we've quantized our kick and our snare. The issue is that the overheads pick up the kick and the snare. And that's what I'm talking about with working with cymbals and triggering, and also with cleaning up the audio. It gets really tricky. So let's listen to the ride real quick. And you can hear that that's off also. So when we put the ride back in with the kick and the snare, you'll hear the discrepancy of the quantized kick and snare with the kick and snare that was picked up in the ride cymbal. There's a lot of clunking and cluttering and clanging going on. It's awful. So we're going to quantize this ride cymbal here. You'll notice that it picked up the snare, a lot of the snare, and you'll also notice that that there's a lot of transients that we don't need in there. So again, we're gonna have to go in here and manually add a lot of these guys in. So we're gonna find our hits, which there's one, got that. Well, actually, no, I messed that up. So I'm gonna pull this back and add this one in. And we're just gonna add all of these hits in as we need them. And what I'm hoping for here is that as I stretch and warp the snare and the ride, that it will bring the kick along with it. And if it brings the kick with it, and it kind of, you know, puts that close enough with the quantized kick, that we can keep the ride audio nice and neat. This is where you're going to find if you can or cannot do this. If the mix is so bad, if everything is so bad and out of place in the overheads, and you might just have to scrap it and do it again, you know, because it gets really messy, to be honest with you. And that's why I hate doing this. And we're just going to quantize all of these guys. And again, I'm hoping that it's going to stretch everything around it to make it good enough with the quantized audio. And, you know, the rest of this isn't too bad. Let's move all these over a little bit. And then we will listen to it just by itself first. And if you have too much of that that noise in the background, like I can't cut that out. If I tried to cut the noise out, the ride would go with it and it would just sound awful, like this. Yeah, we can't do that. So if you have too much of that noise in the background, you can, like I did, is try your best to EQ it out. Take those low frequencies out and try to drown, you know, like I said, once you start throwing all this into a mix, those tiny little sounds go away. You know, when you have the guitar and the drums and things like that all in one. I mean, again, you don't want to do that. You work with a clean mix first. Always try to get the best take. But if you're left with a little bit of that kick stuff going on in the background, work with your EQ a little bit, and just do your best with it if that's what you're doing. But throw it into the mix and see how it sounds and see if you can notice that anymore. So let's put it all together now that we've quantized all of it and see what it sounds like. So in this case, you know, I can work with it. If I threw that into like an actual mix with guitars and everything, and I tweaked the EQ a little bit more, it would sound good. You know, you wouldn't even notice that I had done any of this. Hopefully in post, I'll be able to do a before and after, and I'll show you the clean mix, or the after quantize and then the before quantize. And if so, I will show that here. All right, great. So this is just a way to tighten up your drum mixes. I'm going to be doing 2 other examples of this, and I'll just be making another video for that. That's less teachy and more just like me doing it, so you can get more experience with it and watching other people do it. But that's it. You know, you can trigger the mix if you just want to go gung-ho and have total control and you've got some nice samples. If you're working with a less nuanced music, if you're working with music that is very straightforward and just like bam, go ahead and trigger. There's nothing wrong with triggering. Triggering during a chorus also, like say you've got a chorus of a song where the drum part gets really simple. You know, it's just crash, crash, kick, snare, whatever. Go ahead and trigger that too. Whatever you want to do. You know, just figure it out. You'll find out what you want to do with all this. If you have a little part that messes up, you know, go ahead and try the warp feature out. It's really nice, the warp feature. This is an extreme example. You shouldn't be working with parts that are this poorly recorded. I'm such a bad drummer. But sometimes you do. Sometimes you're just stuck in that spot. So hopefully this has helped you guys out. in, you know, cleaning up drum tracks and anything like that. So go ahead and watch the other video if you want to watch more of this happening. And if you have any other comments, questions, or suggestions, just let me know. And I really appreciate you guys watching. Thanks. Bye.